So all the images that we saw day in, day out, every hour, on the hour, over those 3-4 weeks in the build-up to war, the people in Afghanistan didn't see. They heard about 9/11 through word of mouth, or listening to the radio, or reading newspapers. They didn't see the horrors that we saw of people throwing themselves from the 101st floor rather than face the inferno inside. They didn't see people running for their lives through the streets. They didn't see the towers imploding. They didn't see what we saw every hour, on the hour, over that awful 3-4 week period. And so, in their eyes, they'd heard that something awful had happened. And she said, "We are very sorry, but what has it got to do with us?" And I thought about it, and I thought actually there weren't any Afghans who'd hijacked the planes. They were all Arabs, 15 from Saudi Arabia. Surely if you're going to attack anywhere, it would have been Saudi Arabia. But anyway, she said, what has it got to do with us? And of course, those questions are still being asked today. As the day wore on, I could tell that they were becoming increasingly nervous about my presence there, and so we decided to move on. And we headed back to the border. But General Musharraf had ordered that the gates be closed and nobody was getting in or out of Afghanistan that day. The next morning we returned, and again the gates were closed at Torkham. And I was beginning to panic because I knew that if I didn't ring my London office by 1 o'clock that afternoon, that alarm bells would start ringing. So one of my guides said, "Well, we can't go through a smuggling route." And I said, "Really?" And I thought, this sounds exciting, ducking and diving from tree to tree and going down winding passes in these desolate, countryside and through the tribal areas. And I thought, this is incredibly exciting and will add to my story. So I said, yes, let's go through the smuggling route. Well, 2 hours later we reached this area. Far from it being deserted, it was a hive of activity. There were camel traders, donkey traders, people making coffees and teas. There were scores of Afghan families with all their goods packed into hand carts heading towards the Pakistan border, and there were lots of young men striding over from Pakistan looking to sign up with the Taliban, wanting to fight the great Satan, as they called America. As I say, a huge hive of activity. By this time I was feeling really tired. The Afghan shoes I'd been wearing had cut through my feet, and they were blistered and bloodied, and I was complaining. So one of my guides said, "Well, we can make the final crossing on the back of a donkey." He said, "Can you ride a donkey?" And he took me over to this string of motley animals, and I looked at these donkeys and I said, "Can I ride a donkey? I can ride a horse. I go jumping, I go galloping. Of course I can ride a donkey. Look at them, they're half the size, the same shape. Of course I can ride a donkey." And so he said, "Okay, we're only 10 minutes from the Pakistan border," and he did a deal with the donkey trader, and I got on the back of this donkey. Well, I don't know if it sensed that I was an infidel or what, but it just shot off through this crowd of people, and everybody started running for cover as this out-of-control donkey went berserk. And it charged through all these crowds of people. My arms were waving in the air, the wind was catching the folds of my burqa and making them flap. The donkey was running even faster, and my legs were all over. It was just a nightmare, and I tried to move forward to get the reins to pull in this beast. And as I leaned forward, the one piece of equipment that I had taken into Afghanistan, a camera, fell out of the folds of my burqa. right into the passing view of a Taliban soldier. He shouted and screamed, and in truth I can't remember exactly what happened. I don't know if this donkey just stopped and threw me off, or if he stopped it and pulled me off, but either way, I just went flying through the air and crashed onto the ground. As I picked myself up, I pulled myself up to my full height, and I looked through the grill of my burqa, and I looked straight into the eyes of this Taliban soldier. When I got back to London, my friend said to me, "What was going through your mind when you realised you'd been captured by the most evil, brutal regime in the world?" And I said, well, for a nanosecond, and it was just a nanosecond, I looked through the grill of my burqa straight into the eyes of this Taliban soldier, and I thought, my goodness, you look gorgeous. He had the most amazing green eyes, those trademark green eyes made famous in the National Geographic magazine by that Afghan woman. He had the amazing green eyes, big high cheekbones, a wild mane of hair, and a beard with a life of its own. But as I say, it was for a nanosecond. And then the harsh reality of being captured by the most evil, brutal regime in the world hit me. And he was screaming and shouting, and he obviously wanted the camera, so I took the camera off and I handed it over to him, and then I closed my eyes because I was waiting to be shot. I mean, this is what the Taliban did, didn't they? They shoot women. So I closed my eyes, and after 10 seconds, which is a long time when you're waiting to be shot, I opened my eyes again, and he'd gone. He'd gone to speak to the donkey trader. He wanted to know who is in charge of this woman, and then who paid for the donkey, and then he would find out who is responsible for the camera. Now then, my guides and I had agreed, if things went pear-shaped, we wouldn't know each other. It would be every man for himself or woman for herself. And things had gone pretty pear-shaped at this point. And I looked at this soldier who'd gone charging off, and then he confronted one of my guides, and I thought, he still doesn't realise I'm a Westerner. I can get away. So I latched onto another group and just followed them towards the border, which was so tantalisingly close, just a few minutes away. And I looked back, and by this time my two guides were confronted by the soldier. They were surrounded by a group of men. The camera was being waved angrily, and I thought, oh, they'll understand, and I continued, and I looked back again, and cursing myself, I realised I couldn't leave my guides behind. So I turned round and walked back. I got to the crowd of men, and I tried to push my way through, and I was thrown back. This was man's business, it had nothing to do with a woman. And so I realised that the only way I could attract anyone's attention was by removing my burqa, and so I pulled off the burqa and said in a very loud voice, "Will somebody let me through?" And suddenly you could have heard a pin drop. And it was like the parting of the seas. It was, where did this Westerner come from? You could see the look in people's eyes.